All right, some new video in here. Air Force One taking off for Tel Aviv, Israel. Just a bit ago, President Trump becoming the 6th president to visit America's strongest ally.
So how important is this trip, and how is it different from the previous administration's visit? Here to weigh in, former U.S. Army intelligence officer and former advisor to U.S. and NATO commanders in the Mideast is Andrew Peek. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Great to be here.
So an exciting day as the president heads to Israel. How significant is this visit?
Oh, hugely significant. You know, it's almost more important than the Saudi visit. You know, I think it's very critical that the president reassure our traditional allies in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the other Gulf states, that he understands the threat from Iran, that he understands how fearful they are about the growth of Iranian power over the past decade. And I thought his visits in Saudi Arabia were highly successful in conveying this, the signing of the arms deals, the investment in the kingdom. And I think Israel, he's going to demonstrate to the Israelis that not only does he understand the strategic issue, but he also understands the emotional tie that many Americans have to the Jewish state.
And, you know, in yesterday's speech, which, you know, was very bold and very powerful, you know, he said one thing: for decades, Iran has fueled the fires of sectarian conflict and terror. It is a government that speaks openly of mass murder, vowing the destruction of Israel, and other things as well. I think Iran, in the opinion of this administration, is a threat to the entire world, but maybe to no one more so than to Israel. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, Iran is a regime that specifically seeks a Middle East without Israel. And if you are the leader of Israel, like Bibi Netanyahu, you have to take that very seriously. And I don't think President Obama ever really understood that. You know, he would say, well, in private to the Israelis, well, you know, Iran is not going to nuke you. We can contain a nuclear-capable Iran. But if you're there, 800 miles from Iran, the threat looks really different.
How will Israel respond to, you mentioned this just briefly a moment ago, the arms deal that was announced with Saudi Arabia, the $10 billion arms deal? How will they respond to that, and how can the president reassure them of their continued safety in the area?
Well, I actually think they'll be totally fine with it. You know, in the 80s, there was a big issue when President Reagan tried to sell highly advanced radar aircraft called the AWACS to Saudi Arabia. It was viewed as somehow diluting Israel's military edge that they try to maintain over the Arab states. But right now, the threat of Iran has brought Saudi Arabia, the other Arab states, and Israel closer together than ever before in history. So the Israelis will actually be pleased that we're upgrading the Saudi arsenal and committing ourselves to the traditional American alliances in the Middle East.
And let's talk about the issue, the Palestinian issue, which of course is another big thing they're going to be discussing there as well. I mean, obviously, President Trump optimistic about creating what could be the greatest deal of all time. It certainly would be, a war that's been going on for thousands of years pretty much. But I mean, you remember back in the 90s, Bill Clinton there on the White House lawn, Yasser Arafat, Yitzhak Rabin shaking hands, this big moment. But how long did that last? And I mean, can you really, is there any kind of a deal that could ever make peace in this region? What could be done?
No, I think this is not going to be solved in President Trump's lifetime, let alone his tenure as president. I think it is useful for the United States to acknowledge the problem and acknowledge that we need to continue to look for solutions to solving the Arab-Israeli conflict, because our other Arab allies want that. You know, they want that soundbite. It helps them with their domestic populations. But the problem in Palestine is that you have these radical Arab regimes like Syria and radical Islamic regimes like Iran that continue to support the most violent, the most rejectionist Palestinian elements and prevent a deal from being signed.
All right, Andrew, thank you so much. We will have you back with our continuing coverage that continues up next.